Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the careful riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. Chief of Defence Staff General Vance has told the Globe and Mail that Canada's computer networks were not compromised by the recent attack on Microsoft, SolarWinds, and possibly other software. Still unclear is whether any federal suppliers have been compromised by the wide ranging cyber attack. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank General Vance, who will be retiring soon. General Vance has been a commander at Base Petawawa. It's unfortunate this government did not see fit to support his nomination to the position of chairman of the NATO Military Committee. Premier Doug Ford declared a second provincial emergency on Tuesday and announced a slate of new restrictions in an effort to bring the virus under control. The following are the new restrictions in place effective 12:01 a.m. Thursday, January 14th, 2021. Ontario will be placed under a stay-at-home order, which will require everyone to remain at home with exceptions for essential purposes like going to the grocery store or pharmacy or accessing health care services, for exercise, or for essential work. No return to in-class learning until February 11th at the earliest for the following public health units: Windsor-Essex, Peel Region, Toronto, York Region, and Hamilton. All businesses must ensure any employee who can work from home does so. Gatherings are restricted to 5 people, consistent with the first wave lockdown rules. Masks remain mandatory indoors at open businesses and organizations. Masks are also now being recommended outdoors where physical distancing of more than 2 meters is not possible. There will be reduced hours for non-grocery stores and pharmacies. All non-essential retail will be forced to close by 8 p.m. and open no sooner than 7 a.m. These limits do not apply to stores that primarily sell food, gas stations, pharmacies, convenience stores, or restaurants providing takeout or delivery. I'd like to commend the people of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. As of today, January 13th, 2021, the Renfrew County District Health Unit that announced that we have 0 new cases. And this would point to our residents truly making an effort to adhere to the rules during the holiday season. So thank you to one and all. The Canadian Armed Forces Surgeon General has announced that Canadian Armed Forces has received 1,200 doses of the Moderna vaccine. The first priority group to receive the vaccine will be the Canadian Armed Forces members who are frontline healthcare providers who work in high-risk clinical settings and long-term care facilities, or who have health conditions that make them vulnerable to severe forms of COVID-19. Vaccinations for 1,200 Canadian Armed Forces members in this group are anticipated between January and February of 2021. The second priority group will be Canadian Armed Forces members who are at high risk but could not be accommodated within the first group. The second priority group also includes first responders and personnel who work with the frontline workers who are helping to distribute the vaccine to communities throughout Canada. Vaccinations for members of the second priority group are anticipated between April and June of 2021. The third priority group will be the Canadian Armed Forces members who are engaged in providing essential support to those supplying critical services and operations. Vaccinations for members of this group are anticipated between April and December of 2021. The fourth priority group will be Canadian Armed Forces members working in force generation training and other education activities. Vaccines for members of this group are anticipated between July and the current Canadian supply. Meanwhile, the Liberal government will begin vaccinating federal prisoners on Friday. On Sunday, the government announced they were not going to exercise their option to buy 20 million additional doses of the Moderna vaccine. According to the minister, Canada had secured sufficient doses. Remember, the Moderna vaccine requires regular freezer storage, unlike the Pfizer vaccine, which requires specialized ultra-cold freezers. On Monday, the Liberals faced outrage from the media and public health experts as to why Canada would turn down the vaccine. Despite claiming they had secured enough, on Tuesday, they claimed to have purchased an additional 20 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine. So either we had enough vaccine in the first place, but the government bought more for political cover, or we did not have enough. This means the government, when faced with a choice between the vaccine, which is easy to store, and the one that's harder to store, chose the harder one. The Liberals are either contemptible cowards or incompetent. Neither is great for a government in the middle of a pandemic, and September is too late. Trudeau should not trigger an election until after Canadians who want the vaccine have been inoculated. It is without doubt in the minds of Canadians, the federal Liberal government has failed to be open and transparent regarding Canada's response to the pandemic. Canadians have been denied timely and factual information. Canadians still do not have critical information to know when lockdowns might end, when every Canadian will have access to the vaccine, how residents will learn if it is their turn for the vaccine, the number of people who actually will receive vaccines each month, the number of vaccines safely delivered, stored, and distributed, where Canadians will be able to be vaccinated, when other vaccines will be available in Canada, and at what point the government expects we will achieve herd immunity. From the very outset of this pandemic, the Prime Minister has been disrespectful of Canadians, starting with parliamentarians. But what What's been particularly petty is the tactic by this prime minister and his apologists in the paid off media to try to blame this government's failings on conservatives. His attempts to smear former Prime Minister Stephen Harper and now the provincial premiers over the current government's slow response are pathetic, and it's dishonest. Canadians should not be surprised to learn the reason Canada has limited capacity to manufacture its own vaccine is a direct consequence of the policy of the Prime Minister's father, Pierre, when he changed the patent protection for vaccine manufacturers. When the Liberal Party changed the patent protection on new drugs in 1969, it led to a brain drain. This policy traded temporary short-term financial gain for the long-term pain Canadians find themselves in today. In the short term, there was a drop in drug prices when the patent protection was reduced. The pain was felt more slowly. There was an exodus of major drug companies that used to do research in Canada. The University of Toronto had been world-renowned as the place doctors Banting and Best conducted their Nobel Prize caliber research, leading to the discovery of insulin. Montreal had been a vibrant research community. This proud legacy has been squandered. What Canada received in its place were knockoffs, cheap generic drugs that rely on the work of others. Drug therapies used in other countries are not available in Canada, putting increased financial burdens on our healthcare system. It was not until the election of a Conservative government in 1984 that a real attempt was made to reverse the damage. During legislative committee hearings, the deans of the leading Canadian medical schools pleaded with Conservative parliamentarians to fix Pierre's mistake. If a gifted medical researcher wanted to continue his or her field, they were forced to leave Canada. This fact was noticed in our medical schools. For every successful discovery of a miracle drug, there are 100 failures. The money for the research comes from the successes. The pharmaceutical companies could not afford to have their research copied by generic companies. It made sense to do their drug research where they manufactured the drugs. The Patented Medicine Prices Review Board that was formed could not bring back the companies that had fled Canada. Whenever government interferes in the marketplace, a price must be paid. The price today is Canada has limited domestic capability to manufacture our own vaccine. This leaves Canada and our citizens at the back of the line. The economic statement, his Great Reset budget, or however else the Prime Minister refers to the plan that was peddled to Canadians, follows this same muddled thinking. It does not measure the future consequences ill-thought-out actions have on tomorrow. The Liberal government promises to borrow, and spend on items that have nothing to do with getting a safe vaccine so Canadians can get their lives back. This country will remain in lockdown for months, if not years, after the rest of the world is in recovery. Isn't that strange how the things that were unaffordable before the pandemic suddenly are now affordable? such as national pharmacare or national child care. The Liberal response to the pandemic has left this country poorer. The Prime Minister's uncontrolled deficit spending had savaged this country's finances before the virus hit. While the Green Finance Minister would like Canadians to dismiss the $400 billion added to the national debt, the fact remains that years of previously unimaginable debt lie ahead. Debt is now counted in the trillions. A trillion is 1,000 billions. No wonder a career public servant, the Deputy Finance Minister, promptly resigned the day after the budget statement. The Prime Minister's now revealed hidden agenda, a Great Reset, is based on the false assumption that magically massive public spending and deficits can generate economic, including the pre-pandemic deficits. That is no longer the case. Our older people are just as who got the lucrative contracts. Canadians will need to ask a straightforward and honest question before the next election is called. $1 trillion later, will Canada be better positioned for success in the emerging global economy once the pandemic is over? Let me know your answer to that question in the comment section below. A brighter economic future doesn't happen by luck or just by virtue of saying we should have one. It requires long-term planning and strategic investments in our productive capacity. Now, while my office in the riding is closed to walk-in visits, we're still here working for you. Any taxes. And that includes your old age security, guaranteed income supplement, and Canada Child benefits. If you don't file your taxes, they're going to stop. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant, wishing you a good night.
This is GNN.